Hello, I'm live. I'm reading The Laird and the Lady. It's a fiction by Joan Marshall Grant, a novel. She was known for writing her books about her previous incarnations. Sorry, I'm doing this on the laptop. Um, and we are here in part two. She has met Rowan, they met at a French chateau and decided that they were in love. I don't know what too low FPS, whatever that means. So they got married, and they are now at his Highland castle because Rowan has a castle. He's an heir, and Georgina is his grandmother, and Marylda is under scrutiny of Georgina, but she has discovered some interesting things on her last excursion into the woods with her dog Angela. We are now at chapter 11, The Glorious Twelfth. The evening before the 12th, that sacred August day which opens the shooting season, Janet asked Marylda's advice as to which of the two evening dresses, illustrated in the Lady, she could order she should order from Edinburgh. In Marylda's opinion, both were dowdy. So instead of deciding between them, she said, I've got some American material that I meant to have made up in France. I'd love to give it to you. Are you sure you can spare it? Of course I can. There's some black velvet and a really lovely olive green satin. You ought to have it, for isn't it much more your colour than mine? There's a dressmaker in Inverness, said Janet hesitatingly, but she's not much good except at copying. I've got plenty to lend you. Let's go and see which suits you best. Is she really trying to be nice or patronizing me? Thought Janet, as they went upstairs together. In any case, why not learn what I can from her? If Rowan likes clothes, the sooner I become intelligent about them, the better. So Marilla found an unexpectedly attentive audience while she discoursed learnedly on colour and line. Poor girl! It is bad luck for her never to have been able to buy anything becoming. Later on, I might take her to London and get her some proper clothes. In the glow of prospective philanthropy, it was easy to forget that until now there had been nothing except smouldering hostility between them, so she remained oblivious of how annoying it was for Janet to try on dresses that were always too tight across the hips and made her bust look even more bulky. You're taller than I am, she said consolingly. Janet, with difficulty, managed not to retort, why not say fatter and be done with it? But Marylda had now assumed the role of fairy godmother and was concerned only with producing a startling improvement in her reluctant subject. Do you mind if I try a new hairdo? It's naughty of me to cram it all into that bun. Mistaking grudging permission for shyness, she sat Janet in front of the dressing table and pulled the pins out of her hair. You'll have to get someone really good to design a coiffure for you, but I'll do my best. Popping up little things here. Annoying. Okay. After several efforts, during which hairpins frequently tried to impale her scalp, and the comb appeared to have abnormally sharp teeth, Janet saw herself with a crown of braids, which she reluctantly had to admit was a decided improvement. And you must use mascara. You've got lovely lashes, but they're too fair to show. I'd look a fool with black stuff running down my face whenever it rains. Then have them dyed. And you must pluck your eyebrows a bit, especially across the bridge of your nose. And use an eyebrow pencil, dark brown, of course, not black. That Janet, far from being pleased, was bitterly resentful at being used as a doll, escaped Marylda's attention. You've got a lovely skin, but you ought to choose your powder and lipsticks more carefully. She opened a box in which 2 or 3 dozen grey enamelled tubes were arranged in graduated colours. Here, try this one. No, put it on carefully. Smooth it with your little finger. Yes, that's right. And here's another to wear with your yellow dress. Of course, you are to keep them. I brought masses back with me. It's awfully decent of you, said Janet, feeling like an awkward schoolgirl, dark with hatred for sophisticated grown-ups. Marylda, a little embarrassed that a casual gift should have produced such keen emotion in the aloof Janet, took a suit from the wardrobe. You can copy this too if you like. Balmain made it for me before we left Paris. I think I'll wear it tomorrow. Janet studied the pale blue spectator sports with an eagerness she tried to conceal. Could Marilyn really be so ingenious as to wear pale blue on the hill? Would it be too indecent not to warn her against so hideous a gaffe? This cyclamen sweater goes with it. I think it's rather gay, don't you? Rowan came with me to the fitting, though, poor darling, he loathes dress shops. So she patronized Rowan too, did she? Well, let her make a fool of herself and be sent back to change. I think you'll look lovely in it, she said fervently. Marylda found her enthusiasm rather touching. The next morning, confident that the blue could not be more becoming, Marylda was on her way to join the shooting party already assembled in the hall when Duncan met her at the top of the stairs. He looked startled and exclaimed, "You can't go down like that. I know it sounds damned rude, but you can't." She drew back. "What on earth do you mean? You're wearing blue, pale blue." "My dear Duncan, it's charming of you to take so much interest in my clothes, but I honestly don't consider it's very important if I happen to choose a color you dislike. Has Rowan seen you in it?" "Since you're so interested, he chose it himself. I mean, has he seen you in it today?" "How could he, when he went down before I was awake? Funnily enough, being free, white, and 21, I'm capable of dressing myself without supervision. In case you think my taste isn't up to Highland standard, I may add that even Janet approves. I told her that I was going to wear it." "I'm surprised she could be quite so bitchy. That garment is more unsuitable to the hill than pink at a state funeral." He took her by the arm and hurried her along the passage to the bedroom. "What else have you got?" He flung open the wardrobe. "Bright colors would scare every grouse for miles. Here, this will do." He flung a grey-green tweed on the bed. "Hurry up. You don't want Rowan to know that she nearly made a fool of you." She pulled off the blue suit while he looked for a jersey, discarding several until he found one sufficiently inconspicuous. It was difficult to dress in a hurry when she was trembling with anger and humiliation. "Is that all right? Oh, damn now, my hair's untidy." They heard Rowan's voice. "Marylda, buck up. Everyone is waiting." They came out of the bedroom together. Marylda agitated, Duncan obviously embarrassed. "Helping her to dress? Kind of you," he said, and turned abruptly on his heels. "I was late," said Marylda breathlessly. "He only came up to tell me to hurry." "I've already thanked him," said Rowan stiffly. Behind his back, Duncan smiled at her to show he was not disturbed by her husband's flare of temper. She found it difficult to be civil to Janet, who had not been quick enough to conceal her disappointment at the failure of her plan. For the first drive, Marylda went with Rowan. The semicircle of turfs which made the butt would have been a comfortable shelter if there had not been 3 inches of water in the bottom. Having been told that any unnecessary noise was to be avoided, Marilla did not venture on conversation. Rowan broke the silence by suggesting that she might act as loader and showed her how to insert cartridges into his second gun. So there was no taboo against talking. He was just being sulky. She wanted a cigarette, but decided not to light one unless it was offered. She balanced herself on her shooting stick and tried to enjoy the prospect of heather and hills. Should she venture a comment? Should she venture a comment on the scenery, or would this be more out of place than picking wildflowers in the bunker during a serious golf match? She could see a line of boys waving sticks to which white rags were attached, and occasionally uttering discordant cries, advancing across the moor. Sandy's got the flankers too far out, said Rowan impatiently, a remark that obviously required no answer. She gathered that flankers were the two keepers, one at each end of the line of beaters who waved large white flags. She heard a few scattered shots from the farther butts that were hidden by a rise of ground. Sounds as though Georgina's getting some over here, said Rowan. Towards the end of the drive, he took a single bird, too far in front, missed, got it with his second barrel, a following shot. It lay beating its wings 30 yards behind the butt. It's not dead, she whispered urgently. Mark it. Maybe a runner. He thrust the empty gun into her hand and snatched up the other she had put down on the turf ledge in front of her. The wounded bird still fluttered. Rowan, you must finish it off. Surely you can't miss it from here. Be quiet, he snapped. A bird came fast downwind and he put up his gun. The trigger clicked on the empty chamber. He broke the gun and found she had forgotten to load. I'm sorry, Rowan, I forgot. I was watching the wounded bird. You might at least try to be efficient. He reloaded, putting the second gun on his far side to show he had expected no further assistance. Janet and the next butt got a right and left, the first bird falling with a thud in front, the second towering, and then plummeting into the deep heather behind her. Good shooting, she's better than most men, he exclaimed. A wounded hare tried to break back towards the beaters, jinked twice, then fell over on its side and screamed before it kicked spasmodically and dying. The sound reminded Marylda of a child she had seen run over by a tram in a French town. There had been the same note of agonized surprise as he had stared at his severed leg, still standing upright in the little button-coat boots. The beaters closed up. The guns and their women came out of the butts and began to pick their birds. Lassie and Jock displayed their disciplined intelligence, a little scornful of the visiting spaniels, but accepting Duncan's Labrador as an equal. Lassie brought Rowan's wounded bird to him, and he crushed its skull with a quick pressure of his thumb. Some keepers bite the heads, he said, annoyed with Marylda for refusing to share his enjoyment. How charming! The cozy, unspoiled primitive in them, I suppose. It's not particularly clever to be sarcastic about a sport you don't understand. Rather go with Duncan for the next drive. No, better stay with me, you might put him off. Oh, Rowan, stop being so disagreeable. Why not? Why? Try not to look so bored. Bored? I don't think even Belson could be called boring. In silence they plodded through the tall heather to the next line of butts. Marylda's right shoe was already waterlogged. She gave up trying to keep the other foot dry, and deliberately trod on a patch of brilliant green, which squelched underfoot and splashed her stockings to the knee. Want to try loading again? He asked grudgingly. She practiced breaking the gun and slipping the cartridges smoothly in and out. Don't put it down like that. If you let dirt get into the end of the barrel, it might burst when it's fired. Her feeling of sickness increased. To the scream of the hare was now added a picture of Rowan hideously wounded because she had been careless. She noticed a wisp of white in the mud. It was one of her handkerchiefs. So this was the same butt where Rowan had made love to her only a week ago. It was difficult to recognize it as the same place. More difficult to recognize him as the gay lover. Go back, go back, go back, cried a grouse urgently. I wish I could, she answered in silence. The party, who, except for Marylda, were in excellent humour, collected beside one of the shooting breaks for lunch. Janet helped Georgina to ladle out stew from tin containers kept hot in felt like wicker hampers. Marylda handed buttered scones, reminding herself that here they were not called biscuits, for biscuits were crackers. A black haze of flies hovered over each steaming plate or drowned in gravy. The morning's bag was laid out in the next row, wet feathers and blood-stained beaks of 43 brace of grouse, blood on the nose of 3, and a half a dozen, and a half a couple of hares, a grey hen that someone had taken by mistake. Everyone agreed it was an excellent start, that the motor was at least coming back after the neglect of the war years, that the moor was at last coming back after the neglect of the war years. Marylda tried to eat a hunk of Mrs. MacTaggart's special plum cake, which she had absent-mindedly accepted from Duncan. She managed to get rid of it to one of the spaniels, and took a mouthful of whisky from Rowan's flask. Even the water from the burn was disagreeably today, metallic as the plated cup, one of a series that fitted into each other in a leather case. If only someone would start a conversation in which she could display an intelligent interest. But shooting bulls were worse than golf balls. It was obvious that none of the guests regarded her as the hostess. She was a foreigner whom they tried to put at ease. How could she be expected to cope with the 3 women who marked birds for their husbands with the abject devotion of spaniels who talked of people of whom she had never heard? Even Duncan was apparently absorbed in conversation with an elderly man who was a crony of Georgina's. Someone ought to have told him he was too stout to wear a kilt with decency, much less with elegance. Was she supposed to call him Alistair or Lord Dolwen? Not that it was in the least important, but why give Janet unnecessary opportunity to gloat? Did everyone realize Rowan was indulging in Highland gloom, or had they decided he was already bored with his wife? How often did this nauseating performance take place? She had a vague idea that Rowan had said it was a 4-day moor. Did that mean 4 days in the season or 4 days every week? Rowan came over to her. Tired? He asked, suddenly contrite that she looked so forlorn. No, darling, she smiled a plea for their quarrel to end. Then we'll go off first. I've drawn the top butt. It's always a bit of a pull after lunch. He tucked his hand under her elbow. Sorry I was a pig this morning. Don't know what came over me. Everything seemed to go wrong. I was a clumsy ass. But I'll be more efficient this afternoon. Really, I will. She jumped down after him into the butt. He glanced over his shoulder to make sure no one was in sight, then spread his coat for her to sit on. I'm a jealous, moody bastard, but I love you much more than I ever will be able to tell you. Duncan saw him kissing her. So the old boy has got over his gloom, he thought with relief. I'll wring Janet's neck if I catch her trying to make trouble again. Rowan's damn lucky. I hope he's got the sense to realize it. That was the end of chapter 11. Chapter 12 is entitled Fire Against Mist.